Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Films and Stuff. How are you today?
I'm great, Ethan. I'm super pumped. I'm super excited, Ethan. How are you?
You're bouncing. You're just really bouncing, yeah? This is your day. This is your World Cup. Your Super Bowl.
I think we both know why.
We do know why. This is the day that we've been waiting for. The day we get to talk about the new Nicolas Cage film.
The one with like 60 words in the title, but is still worth every word.
What's the title?
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Do you call him Nick Cage or Nicolas Cage? How do you refer to him? He's your guy.
So
He's
I've
your
always
man
just
crush.
called him Nick Cage because, you know, I feel like I have a familiarity with him that is totally unearned.
Yeah.
But I call him Nick Cage, which is funny because in this movie, he goes by Nick Cage, the actor, but it's Nick with a K, right?
Yeah.
And in real life, when he's referred to himself as Nick Cage, it's N-I-C. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that was their subtle way of saying that this is like a fictionalized or dramatized or comedicized version of himself.
All right. So you want to set the stage for what is this? I mean, for weeks, not weeks. It's only been out for a short time. I've been lukewarm at best about this film, partially because I can't even get the title right. It's Unbearable. I keep saying unnecessary. You know, whenever I'm messaging you, I keep saying unnecessary, but the first word is actually unbearable. Like, you've been very hot to trot on this. You know, this has been your summer blockbuster. You want to set the stage for what this was about or how this came to be?
Sure. So it's a super, super simple premise because this is semi-autobiographical, right? It's a semi-biopic in that regard, right? And think of this as the winning time of Nicolas Cage, which is to say it's a dramatized version of his real life. So the premise is that Nick Cage, the actor, is well regarded in Hollywood, but is not doing well. He hasn't received a lot of roles. He has not been in the theaters too often. He's kind of down on his luck in terms of career, in terms of finances, and then also in terms of family. He's got an ex-wife, and he's having a really hard time connecting with his daughter because, you know, when they do things like movie nights, he insists on doing like cinema verite, like he insists on watching these movies from like the 20s and 30s, which he believes are like the golden era of Hollywood. And she doesn't want to see any of that nonsense because what teenager does, right? Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's struggling. He needs cash. And his agent, Neil Patrick Harris, is
Doogie Howser. Another great cameo by Doogie Howser.
Yeah. So Doogie is able to get him a part, but it's not a movie part. A millionaire in Spain is interested in hiring Nick Cage to come to his birthday party because he's a huge Nicolas Cage fan.
Yeah.
And the idea is that he's going to pay Nicolas Cage $1 million for him to fly to Spain, spend a week with him, be there for his birthday, and then go. And the guy who hires him turns out to also be like this Pablo Escobar-esque like drug or, you know, mafia boss from Latin America somewhere. It was very not clear. Spain somewhere. And
Pedro Pascal. Pedro
Pascal.
Who is white hot right now. Yeah.
Oh, incredibly so. Yeah. And he is also a Nicolas Cage fan, right? And so he wants to write a movie with Nicolas Cage, and then, you know, hijinks ensue when we find out that not all everything isn't as it seems. And you know, I don't want to spoil it, but Nicolas Cage gets involved with the CIA or FBI, I can't remember.
CIA.
But some 3-letter organization from the US. And they're there to try to save a girl that they believe has been kidnapped by Pedro Pascal. and they recruit Nicolas Cage to help him do that. And then, of course, again, hijinks ensue. We find out more, and then the movie ends, and it's a great ending. I highly recommend you all watch it.
So you gave it away. So is it fair to say, Pete, that objectively you are giving this a 5 must see in the cinema? Is that correct?
Absolutely. And if you can somehow watch this with Nicolas Cage, that's a 10.
So, I give it to you. I really have to tell you, Pete, this time you've nailed it. I mean, obviously, generally you and I are aligned in terms of our films. This one I was lukewarm about, as I mentioned, just because I'm not as much of a Nicolas Cage fan as you, and we can go into why based on his lackluster filmography for the past couple of years. I have to say this was a smash hit. It had, there are films out there that are a little bit off the beaten path, let's say. They're a little bit quirky, and they start good, but then kind of in the midway point, they lose their steam, and it becomes either silly or trite, and it just kind of like limps to the end, right? And it's something that started pretty cool, and you kind of got into it. You're like, oh, this is quirky. This is offbeat. I can get into this. And then midway point, then it's like the writers just kind of ran out of fresh ideas, and it really just hobbles along. I have to say, I think this was possibly the opposite, where it started solid, but it really picked up towards, towards the middle and towards the end. And I have to say, rarely are you satisfied with kind of the last third or the last quarter or the ending of a film. This one nailed it in every way. It was sentimental without being sappy. It was funny without being goofy. It was smart. It was witty. It had just the right amount of poking fun at itself. And I think it's all from the premise, which is Nick Cage plays himself. He doesn't play, some fictional actor. He plays himself, and it's kind of like fiction mirrors reality, which is, hey, the guy's struggling to get a great role. He's not washed up, but not really A-list anymore.
Either, yeah.
But he's still got a lot of talent and a lot of ideas in his head. And Pedro Pascal, I have to say, if he's already white hot, he nailed this role. He played it so well. He was so funny and sincere in it. I have to say, I always kind of liked him as an actor, but this one, he became extremely endearing to me. I thought it was all the way exceptional. I totally agree. This is absolutely a must-see, and for no other reason than it was just so clever the way that they did it.
Yeah. I think the thing about Nicolas Cage is, and I understand there's a lot of hesitation by a lot of people to go see Nicolas Cage movies, because for a couple of reasons, but I think the primary reason is that Nicolas Cage, his movies have he's just transcended them so that his movies aren't really relevant to the point that it's more about Nicolas Cage, the actor, than it is about Nicolas Cage's movies. Because he's so over the top. He's so charismatic. He throws 110% of himself into every role. So I think a lot of people get distracted by that. And the reality is that Nicolas Cage himself because of that, has become very much a niche actor. Even though I still think that he's an A-list actor, right? He's still an Oscar winner. He's still won numerous critical awards. People still love his roles. But because he's kind of become this niche actor as the guy that you kind of think of when you're thinking of, I need an actor who's kind of crazy, who's a little over the top. He's kind of the first guy you think of, right?
Even his filmography, every role that he played was also very over the top, right? I mean, what I remember is, leaving Las Vegas, right? I mean, that's a dramatic role. The Rock. I mean, his character is Stanley Goodspeed, right? The scientist, right? Con Air, Cameron Poe, right? Who is the Lethal Weapon, who's got the beautiful little daughter. Face Off. I mean, Castor Troy. I mean, even the names of the characters he plays are so crazy, right? Stanley Goodspeed, Cameron Poe, Castor Troy. Let's go to Gone in 60 Seconds. What was his character? Memphis Reigns. I mean, he is so over the top that even his roles, even, Lord of War, I mean, he was a lightning rod, because he just took on larger than life roles and characters and he made them. So I agree with you. And of course, there's a whole generation who loves him because of what he did from the mid 90s to kind of the mid early aughts, right? Mm-hmm. Then things kind of went a little quiet. He's still A-list in that sense that everybody knows him. He's not A-list in the sense that, hey, there's a new Marvel movie coming out. Who's the hot actor right now that we should, cast in that role? He's not there. You got to dig a little bit and say, oh, yeah, that's right. Nicolas Cage is still there.
It's interesting because Nicolas Cage has kind of done not the opposite, but something very different to what a lot of actors do, right? Which is most actors, they start off as either like maybe comedic niches or dramatic niches or whatever kind of niche they fit in.
Yeah.
And once they find a role that kind of sinks their teeth into the art of acting and they get recognized for their ability and they become like, whether it's Oscar winners or not, right? They tend to stay in that role, right? They tend to kind of go back and say, hey, now that I've won an Oscar, I'm going to only do these roles that promote how good of an actor I am as an Oscar actor, right? So think of Tom Cruise, not Tom Cruise, sorry. Think of Tom Hanks, right?
Yeah.
Tom Hanks started off his career, remember, with like bosom buddies, and he was like a typical, or even Matthew McConaughey, exactly.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks was a comedic foil.
Yeah.
He transitions into drama.
Yeah.
He transitions into high drama, which nets him awards, and then he kind of stays in that high drama role. Yeah. Matthew McConaughey, rom-com lead, the young, hunky guy who transitions into drama, who transitions into high drama. And now, I'm not saying that all his movies are Oscar-worthy movies, but generally speaking, you don't see him go back. He'll never go back to do a rom-com anymore.
He should.
Whereas Nicolas Cage...
he should, but I agree.
But Nicolas Cage, look at what he did, right? When I say very, I mean relatively early in his career, he starts off with drama. He gets his Oscar with Leaving Las Vegas, which is, now 20 plus years ago, maybe even 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And then he kind of goes back and says, hey, look, I love movies. I love cinema verite. I love old school Hollywood, but I also just like working, right? And so he's like, all right, I'm going to go and now I'm going to do after Leaving Las Vegas, I'm going to do, a comedy. I'm going to do something like, and don't quote me on the timelines because they all kind of blend together. The early 80s, the mid 80s kind of all blend together, but then I'm going to do Gone in 60 Seconds, where it's a ridiculous character. I'm going to do the movie where he's the B-Man, or I can't remember. But you know what I mean? Like, he goes and does these movies that you wouldn't expect an Oscar winner to do, right?
Yeah.
And, of course, some of these have been stinkers, and I think we'll touch upon that. But, unfortunately, he's maybe not the most prudent or the most fiscally sounded guy, minded guy, right? He's spent a lot of his money on ridiculous things like buying an island in the Bahamas, buying a dinosaur skull from Mongolia. It's
also, I mean, I agree. He is a very impetuous kind of what you think about as like the Hollywood lead, right?
Yeah.
But I also have to say, and this is my unsubstantiated theory. Some of that stuff he did intentionally to remain relevant.
Oh, maybe.
Like it's. I think he's also very mindful that Hollywood is a very competitive place, and to have that 20-year longevity, you need to do something where you need to kind of like shock people.
Sure.
And it needs to be more than just kind of your merits. Tom Cruise even kind of had that phase where the Scientology,
the couch surfing, with Oprah.
the couch surfing, like you kind of, whether that's just coincidental and we're looking back at these things, or whether it's a little bit more manipulated, you kind of need something to bridge that gap where you're like, hey, I'm kind of in my mid 30s, early 40s. I've been in the limelight for a while. Someone younger is coming. I've got to like just shock the Midwestern moms, to like stay relevant.
To make sure they remember me.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you normally. And this isn't just because I'm a huge fan of Nicolas Cage and I'm trying to defend him. But I think so. There's a great interview that Nicolas Cage did. It's either GQ or Vanity Fair. It's available on YouTube. I highly recommend you watch it and our listeners
link to it.
Watch it.
We should link to it.
If I can find the link, I'll put it in with the description in one of these episodes. The point is that when you go through that interview, you can, it really comes out that he is a fan of Hollywood. And when I say Hollywood, I don't mean the culture of Hollywood like actors. I mean in terms of movies.
He's Quentin Tarantino in a way.
He is, exactly.
They really respect the old films.
Super, he's a cinemaphile. Yeah. And it's in that interview especially where it comes through, right? Because before I saw that interview, I defended him for a whole host of different reasons. But it was really after that interview when I was just like, you know what? He may be crazy, but he actually loves this. It's not that he's doing this because it's filling his ego up, which of course I'm sure that's a part of it. But he's also doing this because he genuinely loves movies.
Yeah.
He is kind of like Hollywood royalty in the sense that he's he's the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola. So it's not something, his father was either a professor of literature or was a writer or something like that. These are things that, these are small puzzle pieces that add to the big picture of why he is the way he is, and he loves it. I genuinely believe that he's just a fan, and that, he genuinely enjoys being in these movies, which is why he can give 110% and not care, right? Now, I will agree with you in the last, we talked about it just before we started recording. I think in the last 10 years, a lot of his filmography has been really, with the greatest respect to Mr. Cage, garbage.
The two things, that is true, but the two things that strike me is just the volumes of credits that he has. You see, traditionally an actor has kind of every other year, every 2 years, maybe there's two things that overlap.
In a good sequence, it's a year in between roles. Yeah.
But let me just read this out. After Ghost Rider in 2007, he's got 4 more things in 2007. A little bit of that is actually, that was when he was pretty hot. He's got Grindhouse, Next, National Treasure. Okay, that's 2007. That's 5 things in 2007. He's got 1 in 2008. He's got 4 in 2009, 2 in 2010, 5 in 2011, 1 in 2012, 3 in 2013, 4 in 2014, 2 in 2015, 5 in 2016, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 2017, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 in 2018, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 2019, 2 in 2020, 3 in 2021. In 2022, it says he's got 3. It's just prolific. First of all, that harkens back to when actors in Hollywood were less
contract players, right?
Yeah, they were less prima donna-ish, shall we say? And it was like, hey, just like, Pete and Ethan go to work every day. They were an actor. You have a movie every day. One ends, a new one begins. But in this day and age, I mean, you see folks in like one every 4 years, right? Like if you look at kind of Benedict Cumberbatch, right? Strange 2 comes out in 2022. Strange 1 was in 2014. And then he made like 2 smaller appearances, in Marvel stuff that came out, something small in Spider-Man, something small in wow, that's like kind of one every other year. This guy's putting out 6 a year?
Yeah, you're right. It is a bit like the old school Hollywood contract system where, you didn't work for a specific movie, you worked for a studio, and then you had to pump out as many movies that studio was making. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of that, and I think there's maybe a little bit of element of like also, like this is something that you'd expect to see out of like a B movies because the movies are typically shot in like 10 to 15 days, maximum 20 days. And if you look at most of the movies that he's done in the last decade, a lot of them seem like they would be B movies, right? Or at least modern versions of B movies. Even
if it's a B movie, though, I have to say, having a little bit of experience myself, let's say it's a 30-day shoot. If he's kind of the lead or has a big role, he's kind of got to be available. Let's even say 2 weeks. He's got to learn some lines, do some practice. There might be like some post-production where he's got to do maybe like some voiceover, maybe another scene. Like he doesn't have time. If you're doing 6 a year, that's like 1 every other month. Yeah. Don't even have time to kind of like change your hairstyle, to change your body type, to like really like research the role, to even honestly do any like type of press or media for anything. Hey, it's going to like it's like there's just no time to travel with it, right? So I mean,
but I feel like most of these are also like straight to DVD or straight to streamer-esque movies.
Maybe.
Also, I mean, again, and this goes back to his like financial troubles in real life, not just in the movie. Yeah. Remember Nicolas Cage? Like there was a long time where he was basically doing movies only for the sake of paying back the IRS, right? And this is, whether he was being swindled by his financial manager, like he claims, or whether he was just overspending, which is probably a mix of both. It got to a point where he was just like, listen, I need to do these movies, otherwise I'm broke. And, that's not a good
possibly own $14 million in taxes. It says that he made $150 million. And he owed $14 million. I mean, that's just crazy that he had $14 million in past due taxes, right?
Yeah. So, and then you start to figure out, okay, he's doing like 20 movies every 3 years or whatever it is, right? 5 movies a year, 6 movies a year, and you're just like, he's probably only getting paid a couple $100,000 per movie, and in those movies, he's probably the most expensive item on their budget.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, with all due respect, if I were able to make a movie for $500,000 and I could spend $250,000 of that on hiring Nicolas Cage, as I would definitely do that because, hey, all of a sudden my movie, even if it's a garbage movie, has an Oscar winner in it.
Yeah.
Right?
What did he win an Oscar for? What was it that he won an Oscar for?
Leaving Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
He won Best Actor for that.
Exceptional movie.
And I think he was also nominated for one other movie, and I can't remember what. I don't remember. But yeah, he was nominated for one more.
So back to the
film being John Malkovich, I think. Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's right. Yeah. I mean, I thought this was a great movie. Definitely, I think that it is worth seeing. And it's also given us something else to see because one of the punchlines in this movie is Paddington 2. And I think Films and Stuff should now go do a review of Paddington 2. You agree, Pete?
So hilarious. It's so funny, listeners. Yesterday, I had no idea. I wasn't sure if Ethan was going to watch this movie or not this week. And then all of a sudden, in the afternoon, late afternoon, yesterday, I received a message. I think Films and Stuff should do a review of Paddington 2. And instantly I understood that he had watched the movie. I didn't even need the context. Immediately understood.
I definitely think we should do Paddington 2, yeah?
Sure. I'll watch Paddington 1 and 2 just so that I'm
Do we need to see Paddington 1 to understand Paddington 2? Because they specifically said Paddington 2.
They did.
I think we should just jump to Paddington 2.
All right, I'm fine with that.
I think we'll figure out like the plot.
It's a kid's movie. It can't have that much lore, right?
Yeah, you can't say to your kid, sorry, we can't go see Paddington 2. You didn't see Paddington 1. Right? No parent would say that. So there's got to be something at the beginning that would clarify exactly what's what.
Yeah.
I love the cast in this, to be honest. I thought it was very good. The one person I couldn't place was, do you remember when, I'm thinking of a totally different movie. Actually, I'm thinking of Lost City. Never mind. I take that back. Strike that.
Okay.
Comment. Can we talk about Lost City?
Yeah. Okay. So quickly to recap, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent starring Nicolas Cage as Nick Cage.
Yes.
Really, really, really funny. Lots of great callbacks to Nicolas Cage's own career, including Face Off. And there's some really funny action sequences, which, are, in my idea, the platonic ideal for an action sequence in a comedy, which is to say funny and high action at the same time. Like when when he asks Nicolas Cage to brake on the Jeep and then the guy comes crashing through on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Just good, clean comedy. I think you'll enjoy it. I think everyone's really going to enjoy it, even if you're not a fan of Nicolas Cage. Can
we talk a little bit about the script though, before we move on? Because I thought that there were two very clever things in the script. The first is, I think there were a lot of lines that came from other Nick Cage films. So, for example, do you remember when they were trying to climb that rock wall?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think those lines were from The Rock. It's like, give me your hand, soldier. I'm not going to let you blah, blah, blah.
It could have been.
I felt like there were a lot of lines that to me just struck me somehow like, that kind of seems like it's in there because it's a line from another movie. And I think we should do some research, or maybe someone can identify. I bet that there were more than a handful of quotes from other Nick Cage films that they worked in there.
I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And then the second part is, do you remember when at the beginning of the film, he met with that director in Hollywood, and he was like trying to pitch for this new role, and he said he would read. To me, it seemed like he was going to get that role until he started to read the
vamp.
Vamp the lines, and he did it like terrible. Am I getting that correct? Like it was it was portrayed as he was actually quite bad at the lines, right? He was like pronouncing amygdala wrong.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Like, so for the listeners, like he was supposed to be in this very dramatic scene. This is obviously fictitious. And he was supposed to do it in a Boston accent. And the director's like, you got it. Don't worry. you've got the role. You're the guy. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to do the lines now. And he did them in this terrible, I think it was supposed to be a little bit of a spoof, right? Where he was supposedly trying hard, but it was so bad, right? So in his, right?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like those, and I think those are subtle references to the days when there are two famous Nicolas Cage audition stories. Are one where he rocks up to... So he was in the running to play Superman after the Christopher Reeve Superman and before Superman got remade with Brandon Routh. Okay. He was in the running to play Kal-El and Superman. And so they had like a costume made, and it was like There were fiber optics in the costume. It was going to be like a ridiculous costume. And I don't remember what exactly happened, but like he did the costume tryouts, he did things, and it was kind of goofy. And it like, I think based on just that costume reading and with Nicolas Cage in that costume, they canceled the entire project. And the other famous one was when he pitched for Ghost Rider. Do you know what he did? He took a Harley Davidson into the Warner Brothers Tower office and rode the Harley Davidson in an elevator up to the 14th floor or 50th floor, whatever it was, to meet with the casting director to convince them that he was Ghost Rider. And like, it didn't work for Superman, but apparently they were so impressed that he drove his motorcycle into the lobby, into the elevator, and all the way up that he got the part for Ghost Rider. Which, when you think about it, that's such a Nicolas Cage thing to do, right?
Yeah. So there were a few obvious throwbacks in this movie, right? Remember when the girl got kidnapped at the beginning? She was watching Con Air.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when they were like when his private plane landed in Mallorca, right? And there's the two
the FBI agents or CIA
yeah,
agents.
the two CIA agents. They were talking about what films he was in, and they mentioned The Croods 2, remember?
And,
and he did the voice.
I'm 45.
Yeah,
you have to refer him to as The Rock.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there were a few other quotes in there we're going to have to do. Oh, they talked about like how he was his own stunt driver and Gone in 60 Seconds, right?
Oh, yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think we should go back and we should find out, because I think that there were a lot of very, very subtle Easter eggs in there that we didn't pick up. And I'm sure that there were like a lot of quotes that
I actually have a good idea for a mini game / quiz we can play on this, where I'll go through that script. I will go through the lines and I will put it to you and ask you whether you think that's a Nicolas Cage line from another movie or not.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. We have to do this.
I think that's something that would be really funny to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, honestly, he was super funny in this movie. When he touched his face and he gave himself like this, the liquid or the drug that like paralyzes him, right?
Oh, yes.
This is such a funny scene, right?
When he wills himself in front of the computer to get up. Oh, what? I think I brushed my face.
I can't feel my legs. They feel like rubber.
Guys, I mean, we may not... I hope we're selling this to you adequately, but if we haven't, just promise me, go watch this movie. Even if you're not a Nicolas Cage fan, you will come out of it as a fan of this movie at the very least.
Yeah,
it's a great film.
It absolutely is a great film. So let's if we're done with this, let's just turn our attention ever so briefly to the other thing that we watched, which was really turning back. What did we see? We saw The Lost City with Sandra Bullock.
And what did you think? I know we talked about it last week, but what was your opinion?
I have to say, I thought it was... I mean, it's definitely not a timeless classic, and it's barely a rom-com, but I have to say it was pretty decent. I mean, it's definitely a wait for it, in my opinion. You do not absolutely need to see this in the cinema, but there's something, kind of like heartwarming about it. Don't judge a book by its cover. I laughed a little bit. I thought Brad Pitt's cameo was just out of this world good. Yeah. And it made me want to see Bullet Train even more.
Can I just say, and I didn't realize this until after I saw the movie, and I had to look it up on YouTube. Did you know that there was a mid-credit sequence in this movie?
I did.
So you saw the second half you saw after the credits, you saw what happens?
There's only one thing, right? where he's back and he says like I only lost 10% of my brain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You
I
didn't see
didn't
it?
know that. I had to
yeah.
watch. I had to catch it afterwards,
Oh yeah.
and that was genius. I thought that was really funny.
They're like, didn't you get shot in the brain? He's like, yeah, but you only used 10% of your brain, so I just switched to a different 10%. I'm 100% fine, minus the 10%.
It was so funny. I wish they hadn't ruined the Brad Pitt cameo in the trailer, so I saw it coming in terms of because he was there in the trailer. I wish they hadn't, but still, I thought it was wonderful. That I thought was really funny, and I think it's also like the highlight of how to use Brad Pitt in a comedic role, right? Like I thought that was really good.
Yeah,
but I agree with you. The movie was very blah. Otherwise, I'm also kind of getting old. It's getting old to see Daniel Radcliffe play the bad guy / evil British guy because he was also there in Now You See Me. And it's just, he doesn't sell it to me as a bad guy. Not after so many years of seeing him as
he's too much of a good guy, actually. Yeah, I agree.
So I'm a bit tired of that. I think he can do other things better. But overall, it was okay. It had slight National Treasure, slight Indiana Jones vibes in the sense that they were looking for a lost city, and there was a little bit of adventuring around. Some decent action.
The big problem is I don't find Channing Tatum funny. In 21 and 21 and a half Jump Street, I thought he played very, very well, but honestly, I don't find him funny. And Sandra Bullock can be humorous, but alone she is not, and I felt like there needed to be like Brad Pitt is funny, but there's something about he wasn't even trying to be funny. Like the character wasn't goofy. It was just the way that he played it. Yeah. Made it humorous. And I just find Channing Tatum doesn't have that comedic element to him that I remember from like 21 and 21 and a half Jump Street, actually.
I don't mind him, but I fully understand what you're saying because I don't think of him as a funny ha-ha character or actor. I think of him more like like the stereotypical frat boy kind of character, like he's the jock, if it were, as you kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, he should be, I agree. Like, it's also the character, right? Because he was supposed to be kind of the pretty boy, but being a little bit bumbling, And
what would you have thought if Brad Pitt were his character and vice versa?
Yeah, it almost would have been a little bit better,
Right?
It almost would have been a little bit better,
I think it would have also been extra funny because Brad Pitt, even though he is a very handsome man, isn't thought of as like the pretty boy who's ditzy. Yeah. Right? You don't think of him as like a male bimbo, for lack of a better word.
I agree.
So I think that would have been kind of funny to have him as be the Fabio-esque guy.
Yeah.
In the background, who's pining after who's worried about losing his livelihood because she wants to quit.
I agree. I totally agree. And what you say about Daniel Radcliffe, God bless that guy because he's super talented. But I agree, he's not really a bad guy. And maybe part of it is that he wants to get away from his
Harry Potter,
Potter roots. But he just doesn't seem like a bad guy. Once I agree, it's kind of a nice change of pace to see someone take that turn as a heel, but that's not his role. And I'm not sure where he goes. I don't have a better suggestion for him.
I think he's a bit too young for it, is what it is. Yeah. It's because, he tries to play that stereotypical, I'm British, I'm evil, but I'm very sophisticated, so you're not sure if I'm
It's always like a very wealthy, spoiled brat type evil person. Yeah.
Right? And like, for example, you could almost see him being someone like Alan Rickman in that regard, but But the point is that he's too young for that, and he looks too fresh-faced, even though, he's maybe in his early 40s or late 30s or however old he is, I don't even know. But in the sense that he just looks too much like a good guy to play a bad guy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what his role is. I mean, I think he'd be the very good, like sidekick. He'd be the very good, like, hey, I've got this wealthy friend and he's like a little bit cuckoo. Like, I could see him playing that, but it's got to be a good-natured person.
Yeah.
I just don't see him being an evil person. When he kidnapped Sandra Bullock, I was kind of like, come on, like, he's a good guy. He wouldn't just do that. Like, it doesn't fit,
So speaking of which, 30-second summary. Sandra Bullock plays a romance novelist. She's kind of jaded. Her husband has died several years ago. Was an archaeologist, writes these romance novels. She's getting tired of it. She wants to quit. She decides that this last book is going to be her very last book. And then she goes on a press tour. And while she's on this press tour, she gets accosted by Channing Tatum's character, who plays the lead in all the covers for her books. And he doesn't want her to quit because, of course, he's worried that if she quits, he won't have a job anymore. Mm-hmm. And while the press tour is happening, Daniel Radcliffe kidnaps her because of her past as an archaeologist and her husband's past as an archaeologist. And he's looking for some MacGuffin, which is like this treasure in the middle of the Pacific. And so he kidnaps her to decipher these hieroglyphic things, takes her to this island, hijinks, what's-his-face, Channing Tatum, follows her, tries to rescue her, hijinks ensue, and then, Daniel Radcliffe is defeated.
Can I say something? Where I would, he was also in this thing where he's a skinhead, Imperium. I didn't see it. Did you?
Who?
He played Daniel
Radcliffe. Yes, I saw. I didn't see the movie, but I saw a black and white picture of him with the swastika on his chest. Yeah.
I think instead, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily what he's doing, but I feel what he's doing is he's like, hey, agent, go find me something as far away from Harry Potter as possible. Yeah. I've got to carve out my own niche. I think he should kind of pull a Nicolas Cage, and he should have like a series, kind of like Entourage, where he's like, hey, I was this wildly successful kind of child actor, and now I'm trying to make it in Hollywood, and look at all these crazy roles I'm being offered. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a villain. I'm not just going to do voiceovers for robots. I'm a very well-educated, theater-trained, actor. I need something better. And you go through all his trials and tribulations, how he's a little bit detached, but, at the same time, like, he's trying to carve out his place and you feel like a little bit of sympathy for him. That would be like a series, that would like, I could get behind. I feel like he needs something like that, which is a little bit of like the Nicolas Cage parody where like he plays himself, but not really himself,
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I don't know.
He's not a bad guy. And the more that he plays those bad guy roles, the more it's really going to like undermine his ability to be a leading man. And he's just going to now be that niche, like, throwaway character.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think he's in danger of typecasting himself.
Yeah.
In his quest to not be associated with Harry Potter in any way.
He's going to typecast himself in an attempt not to typecast himself, exactly. Right? But there's also something, and God bless these very dramatic roles, but your agent really has to sit you down and say, do you really want to play a neo-Nazi in a movie? Like, you're never going to be nominated for an award for playing a racist, by the way.
Although, having said that, Ed Norton kicked ass in the American History X, right?
What year is that?
That was a long time ago. That was mid-90s, early 90s.
Yeah, like, you got it. I mean, I would just be like, hey, maybe it's a great role. It's a very legitimate film, but like, is that really the guy you want to play? Like, where is it getting you in this world, Like, if you play a racist very convincingly, is that a good thing? Like, yeah, like, there's just a few things that you should be careful of. Playing a bad guy is something you've got to take a decision about, right? Will Smith has never played a bad guy. Tom Cruise did it once, right?
Well, Will Smith also just slapped the crap out of an actor,
he's
of a comedian on stage.
He's a real life bad guy. Yeah.
So let's. I would hold off on any major praise for Will Smith at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of role choices. So
yeah,
I feel for Daniel Radcliffe. Hollywood, I'm sure, is difficult enough to navigate without already being like so associated with one role that, it's tough to get yourself out of it. But man, he's not a bad guy. I want to see him in something a little bit happier for him,
Yeah. Anyway, so I think we're in agreement. This is a, wait for streaming if that's your bag. It's,
Lost City is wait for streaming. Nick Cage is rush out and see it immediately.
Indeed. And please do rush out and see it. Support my main man, Nicolas Cage. He needs
and help us identify the quotes and the Easter eggs. There's got to be a lot of stuff out here that we haven't identified because it's very subtle. All the throwbacks to, different Nick Cage memorabilia throughout the film. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't caught up on. Maybe when it comes out on streaming, we'll be able to, jot down some of the quotes and test them out. But right now, I feel like there's a lot, but we haven't really identified it all.
And if any listener out there wants to buy me a $20,000 statue of Nicolas Cage from Face Off with his 2 golden guns, I will gladly take it off your hands. Anyway, so look, I think that these 2 movies are a mixed bag. Go watch Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Wait for The Lost City. You won't be disappointed in either.
Now, before we sign off, tell our listeners what our next episode is about.
Can we please not talk about Halo, for the love of God?
It's going to be Halo season finale. And we're not gonna say who, but one of us loved it, one of us hated it, and it may almost be a debate club episode. But let's have it out on our next show.
All right. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, listeners.
Thank you, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.